That night on The Tonight Show, a question was asked. And the tech world's most talkative voice went completely silent because Jimmy Fallon had asked what nobody else ever had. The interview was going perfectly. Linus Sebastian, YouTube tech legend, founder of Linus Tech Tips with over 15 million subscribers, the man who could talk enthusiastically about computer processors for 45 minutes straight, was in his element. He'd walked onto the Tonight Show stage to massive applause, fist-bumped Jimmy Fallon, settled into the guest chair with his usual energetic casualness. They'd been talking for maybe 6 minutes. Linus was animated, gesturing wildly as he explained some new graphics card technology to an audience that probably didn't fully understand but was charmed by his genuine passion. Jimmy was laughing at all the right moments, asking follow-up questions, playing the perfect host. It was television gold. Easy. Fun. Exactly what both of them did best. And then Jimmy glanced down at his blue cue cards and asked the question that changed everything. "So Linus," Jimmy said, his tone light and conversational, "I read that you started making tech videos in your spare time while working at a computer store. But here's what I'm curious about, when did you know? When was the exact moment you realized you had to choose between the safe job and the crazy YouTube dream?" Linus's smile froze. His hands, which had been gesturing enthusiastically a second ago, stopped mid-air and slowly lowered to grip the armrests of the guest chair. The energy in the studio shifted so abruptly that the audience felt it before they understood it. The laughter died. Questlove glanced at his bandmates uncertainly. Jimmy's producer in the control room leaned forward toward the monitors. Linus opened his mouth. Closed it. Opened it again. No words came out. Jimmy stopped mid-joke. The entire studio froze. Jimmy's smile faded. He set down his cue cards and leaned forward slightly. "Hey, you okay, man?" Linus nodded, but his jaw was clenched tight. His eyes had suddenly gone glassy, that telltale shine that comes right before tears. "Yeah, Linus's voice was rough, barely above a whisper. "Nobody's ever asked me that before. Not like that. Not the exact moment." The cameras stayed locked on both of them. 300 audience members sat in complete silence, sensing they were about to witness something real. Jimmy didn't rush to fill the silence. He just waited, his expression shifting from confused to concerned to something deeper, the look of someone who had accidentally touched a wound he didn't know existed. "Take your time," Jimmy said quietly. Linus took a shaky breath. It was in a hospital parking lot. 12 years ago. And I've never told this story. Not on camera. Not to my audience. Not even to most of my team. To understand what happened next, you need to understand what happened in 2012. Linus Sebastian wasn't always the confident, successful YouTuber with millions of subscribers and a media empire. In 2012, he was a 26-year-old guy working at a computer retail store in Vancouver, making decent money, living a stable life. He'd been making tech videos as a side project for a couple of years. Product reviews and tutorials filmed after work in his tiny apartment, uploaded to a small YouTube channel that was growing but nowhere near sustainable. He loved making those videos. They were creative, fun, a way to share his genuine passion for technology. But they weren't paying the bills. His job at the store was. And then there was his father. David Sebastian had worked in construction his entire life. Hard, physical labor that had slowly broken his body down over 4 decades. Bad knees. Chronic back pain. Hands that ached constantly. But he'd never complained. He'd provided for his family, put Linus through school, and taught his son that real work meant showing up every day to a job that paid you reliably. David didn't understand YouTube. Didn't understand how talking into a camera about computer parts could be a career. He'd watched a few of Linus's videos with polite confusion, the way parents do when their kids have hobbies they don't quite get. "It's nice, son," David would say. "But don't quit your day job." In early 2012, Linus got an offer. A tech company wanted to sponsor him to make videos full-time. The money was less than he made at the store. There was no guarantee it would last. But it was a chance, maybe the only chance, to turn his passion into his profession. He was terrified. He had a mortgage, bills, responsibilities. The safe choice was obvious. Keep the stable job, keep making videos on the side, don't risk everything for a dream that might disappear in 6 months. He called his father to ask for advice. They met at a coffee shop in Vancouver. Linus explained the offer, the opportunity, the risk. He was talking fast, nervous, trying to justify why he was even considering something so impractical. David listened quietly, sipping his coffee, his weathered hands wrapped around the cup. "You want to know what I think?" David finally said. "Yeah, Dad. I really do. I think you should keep your job at the store. Build up savings. Maybe do the YouTube thing in a few years when you're more stable." Linus felt his chest tighten. He'd known that would be the answer. Of course that would be the answer. But hearing it out loud still hurt. "But," David continued, setting down his coffee cup and looking his son directly in the eye, "I also think I've spent 40 years doing the safe thing. And I'm 62 years old with a broken back and nothing but regrets about the things I was too afraid to try." Linus stared at his father. "I don't want that for you," David said, his voice thick with emotion. "I want you to be crazy enough to take risks I was too scared to take. So if you're asking for permission, you don't need it. But if you're asking for my blessing, you have it. Go make your videos. See what happens. And if it doesn't work out, I'll help you figure out what's next." Linus made the decision that night. He gave his notice at the store. He accepted the sponsorship deal. He went all in on YouTube, terrified and exhilarated in equal measure. 3 months later, David Sebastian had a massive stroke. He was in the hospital for 2 weeks before he died. Linus spent every available moment at his bedside, holding his father's hand, talking to him even though David couldn't respond, telling him about the videos he was making, the subscribers he was gaining, the dream that was slowly, impossibly, starting to work. "You were right, Dad," Linus whispered in that hospital room. "You were right to tell me to try." David died without ever seeing how big Linus Tech Tips would become. He never saw his son build a media company. He never saw the millions of subscribers or the successful business or any of it. But he'd given Linus permission to try. And that permission had changed everything. Subscribe and leave a comment, because the most powerful part of this story is still ahead. Back in the Tonight Show studio, Linus was crying openly now. Not quiet tears. Full, body-shaking sobs that he wasn't even trying to hide. Jimmy Fallon had tears streaming down his own face. The audience was crying. Even Questlove had his hand over his mouth, visibly emotional. "I'm sorry," Linus managed to say, trying to compose himself. "I didn't mean to." "No," Jimmy interrupted firmly. "Don't apologize. Not for this." He stood up from behind his desk, something he almost never did during interviews, and walked around to sit on the edge of the desk closer to Linus. "Your dad gave you permission to chase the dream," Jimmy said softly. "And you built something incredible. 15 million people who trust you, who learn from you, who love watching you talk about technology because your passion is genuine. That's his legacy living through you." Linus nodded, wiping his eyes. "The worst part is, he never got to see it work. He died thinking I might have just made the biggest mistake of my life. But you know he'd be proud now, right? I hope so. God, I really hope so." Behind the scenes, Fallon made a decision that defied every producer's expectation. Jimmy turned to look directly into camera one, addressing the audience at home. "Folks, we're going to do something we don't usually do on this show. We're going to take a moment. Because I think what Linus just shared is important. And I think a lot of people watching right now have someone in their life, a parent, a mentor, someone who believed in them, who didn't get to see the dream come true." He looked back at Linus. Did your dad ever see any of your videos that got big? A few of the early ones. Before he got sick. He watched one that got like 50,000 views and he was so confused about why that many people would care about computer cables. Linus laughed through his tears. But he told me he was proud. Even though he didn't understand it. He said, "I don't get it, but I'm proud you found something you love." Jimmy smiled. That's a gift. You know that, right? A lot of people never get that. I know. That's why it kills me that he's not here to see. Linus gestured vaguely, encompassing the studio, the show, everything. All of this. Jimmy was quiet for a moment. Then he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a pen. The same pen he used to sign autographs, to write notes to guests, the pen that had been in his pocket for every show for the past decade. Linus, Jimmy said, holding out the pen. I want you to have this. Linus looked confused. Jimmy, I can't. Yes, you can. Because every time you use it, I want you to remember something. Your dad gave you permission to chase your dream. He gave you his blessing. And that blessing doesn't expire just because he's not here anymore. He's still proud of you. Every video. Every success. Every moment. But this is the moment no one in the studio, and no one watching at home, ever saw coming. Linus took the pen with trembling hands. He looked at it for a long moment, then looked back up at Jimmy with an expression of such raw gratitude that the camera operators had to wipe their own eyes to keep filming. Thank you? Linus whispered. No, Jimmy said. Thank you? For being brave enough to answer that question honestly. For showing people that it's okay to still grieve someone even when you're successful. For reminding all of us that the people who believe in us matter more than anything else. The audience erupted into applause. Not the excited, entertainment applause. The deep, cathartic applause of people who had just witnessed something profoundly human. Linus stood up, and Jimmy pulled him into a tight hug right there on stage. The cameras kept rolling as two grown men, one a late-night host, one a tech YouTuber, held each other while an audience of strangers celebrated vulnerability and grief and the power of a parent's blessing. When they finally separated, Jimmy wiped his eyes and tried to regain some composure. Okay, he said with a shaky laugh. We need to do actual TV stuff now or my producers are going to kill me. Linus laughed too, the tension finally breaking. Pretty sure you just broke every interview rule. Worth it, Jimmy said firmly. He looked directly at the camera again. If you're watching this and you have someone in your life who believed in you, call them. Tonight. Tell them what they mean to you. Because one day they won't be there, and you'll wish you had. Share and subscribe. Make sure this story is never forgotten. After the show, Jimmy's producers wanted to edit the segment. Make it tighter. Cut some of the crying. Jimmy refused. Air it exactly as it happened. People need to see this. The segment went viral. Not because it was funny or entertaining, but because it was real. Millions of people watched Linus Sebastian break down on The Tonight Show. And millions more shared their own stories of parents who had believed in them, mentors who had given them permission to try, people who had died before seeing the dream come true. Linus still carries Jimmy's pen. He uses it to sign every major business contract, every partnership, every important decision. And once a year, on the anniversary of his father's death, Linus films a special video. He sits down in front of the camera, holds up that pen, and tells his 15 million subscribers about the man who gave him permission to be brave. Share and subscribe. Make sure this story is never forgotten. Dad never saw me on The Tonight Show, Linus said in one of those videos. But Jimmy Fallon helped me understand that his blessing didn't expire when he died. It's still with me. Every single day. The pen sits on Linus's desk. A reminder that sometimes the greatest gift isn't seeing the dream come true, it's giving someone permission to chase it.